Ryan, thank you so much for joining me on the show. Thank you for being brave enough to come share with us. Hopefully this will be helpful to others as well that have been in a similar situation. We're here talking about your brother today, the loss of your brother. Really, really hard time for your family. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you?
I'm an author, entrepreneur, and seeker.
Okay, why don't we just start with, tell us a little bit about your upbringing. What was your relationship like with your brother, and how much older was he?
My brother was 3 years older than me, and my relationship with him was great. He was an awesome bigger brother. He was my idol, my hero. Everything he did was cool, and I just wanted to be him. And I would say that I emulated him for a very long time in my life. He managed to get me into video games because he was all into that. So I got into that, and he got into basketball, and I got into basketball. He got into taekwondo, so I got into taekwondo, and I just really wanted to be my bigger brother for as long as I can remember. I think even all the way up until I was like 14 or 15, I was still even listening to the music he listened to because I just wanted to be more like him. So
as young siblings do,
yeah,
right? And that's why the parents often say, your siblings are watching you. So was there any times where your big brother got you into trouble? Did you feel like there was a time when he became a little difficult for the parents, or?
Yeah, I mean, my brother was all about trouble. We grew up in a poor family situation, and I think there's definitely some rebelliousness that comes along with that. And my brother was definitely a rebel, and he liked to prank, and he definitely. I mean, even the first time that I kissed a girl was because my brother forced me into that situation.
Oh, no.
He just wanted to see me kiss a girl, and he thought it was funny. And then we were both terrified. And I just think that's the sort of brother he was. He was always kind of pushing me into the next era and stuff. And, but yeah, definitely a trouble starter.
Was there a time, what was the time, I guess, when you saw maybe something extra mental that he was dealing with? Was there something specifically that happened? I know there was something big that happened at one point, but even before, say, like the accident, was there anything that he would say about having mental difficulties?
No, my brother was pretty clear in his mind. He was just had to be the life of the party. He was always trying to be the loudest and be the one that kind of stole the spotlight. And he naturally did. But that also, I think, opened him up to a lot of things earlier that he shouldn't have got into, like his friend group and stuff where, they're really good guys, but they, I'm pretty sure they had their drug use and the alcohol and they definitely tried to get into bars at younger ages than they should have and stuff like that. And so I don't think his was so much of having any sort of mental issue so much as he felt, well, he was a dreamer. You know what? Like that was his thing. He dreamed big. He was like a lot of people who say, I want to be rich or I want to be famous. And their life just becomes this real obsession about being somebody and not kind of being happy with who you are. And I feel that my brother was always trying to be more than who he was. I don't know if he ever loved who he was, which is kind of strange considering as I also think he was a narcissist. So does that make sense that you can be a narcissist, but also maybe not love yourself?
100%.
Okay. So,
but I think there was something really big that happened in your family. And I know that changed him even more, as it often does. So can you give me a little bit leading up? What happened around the holidays that really made an impact on your family?
Yeah. So my mother has two sisters, and each sister had their oldest son in a car, and it was a Christmas Eve. I can't remember the year. Everything's a blur. Um, but each sister had their oldest son in the car, and they had come around a corner. It was raining, and they hit another car head on. I'm not sure the details of how that happened, but it was in my cousin's, new Mustang GT convertible. And, when they hit the other car, my cousins were killed instantly. And then my brother was thrown, through the rag top. And he was thrown like really far from the car, and he was landed on his head. And as I said, my cousins were killed instantly, and my brother was just there with his actually, this is getting a little graphic, but his skull was like off. And the police officer who came and helped him, put his skull back on and held him there until they could take care of him. And then after that, he was just not the same person anymore. After that, he was, oddly enough, he was kind of half of himself. He was they say that when you have like a head trauma, depending on where you're hit on your head, it can change you, and it usually changes you one of two ways. You either become a very grateful person, and you're very aware that you're like alive and all that stuff, or you become like the real kind of negative person where you're swearing all the time and you're real aggressive. And my brother became right in the middle. He became super aware, like after he had passed, and we'll get to that.
Can we quickly touch on when this accident happened? What were you doing when you found out that happened, and how did your family react?
Oh,
that was around the holidays, was it?
I was actually, so I was cleaning a place. It was called the Grizzly Paw. And it was really early in the morning, like 6 or 7 in the morning, and I'm cleaning. And then my mom called, and she said, "You have to come home." So she says, "You have to come home right now." So I came home, and I said, "Dustin and Kyle are gone," was the first thing I said. And my mom goes, "How do you know?" And I go, "I don't know. I just feel something."
Yeah.
And she was like, "They both died in an accident, and your brother's in critical." And she said, we're going to fly out there, and we're willing to fly you out there because this might be the only chance to see him. And I actually just remember being like, "No, I'm not going to."
Why? What were you feeling?
Honestly, I just didn't want to see my brother, that way.
Yeah. Totally normal, I think. You wanted to, did you think that your brother you weren't sure if he was going to pass at that time?
We were all pretty sure he wasn't going to survive it, because even the doctors, a couple days later, the doctor, the nurse who was kind of overlooking him, went away for the weekend. And when she came back, they were like, "Oh, you're taking care of Danny." And the doctor was like, "What do you mean? He's still alive?"
Wow.
So what I did was I waited a week. I didn't want to wait forever, but in my mind, I was like, I want to wait and see. I want to wait and see how this plays out, because in my mind, he's my brother. He's this version, and he's my hero, and I don't want to see him in that sort of pain. But after a week, I was like, I better go. So I went to go see him, and I remember, it's kind of funny, but I remember going to the hospital, and even though I was trying to get to him as fast as I can, I kept hoping that every single hallway would lead to another hallway.
Yeah.
I didn't want the hallways to end.
It's just it hurts too much.
Yeah.
It's too hard. Yeah.
Because you don't know what you're going to see with somebody. You're like, what am I about to see? And when I saw him, it wasn't good. I mean, his face was almost his. but his head was kind of U-shaped. And he'd been in a coma. I think it was induced, but he'd been in a coma. And I got there and I said, Danny, you know, like if you have any way to let me know that, you know, I'm here. And in Danny's fashion, his one eye that was kind of floating a bit more than usual, he just like looked at me and he raised his hand and he gave me the middle finger.
Oh.
And oddly enough, that was exactly what I needed at that moment. So I laughed and we worked our way through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was tough.
That's so tough. And I can't even imagine what your parents were going through. And then your both of your aunties had just lost their sons.
Oh, and they didn't just lose sons, they lost angels. You know, like Dustin he's just, you love him. He is the coolest. He was so awesome.
Yeah.
Always funny, you know, really talented. Like, I think like when he was like probably 8, he was using machines, like big farming machines and stuff. Like he just knew how to do things. He could rip apart a car and put it back together. He was like, he was just very, very cool. So and my other cousin, Kyle, was just the sort of guy who wanted to be a part of everything. You could literally run in the house and be like, hey man, let's go throw rocks at a tree. And Kyle would be like, I'm in. He would drop everything he's doing and just be like, let's go do that. And I think that it's rare that people want to be around you so much that they will just drop everything just to be with you. So
you had a massive, massive loss. You had both of your cousins, and then you're going through the feelings of your brother almost passing away at that time. And how did your family react? Was there conflict out of hurt? Was there a closeness, a comfort where, you know, people just came out of the woodwork to be there for your family? What was it kind of like around? Did you have a community?
Well, you have to understand that like 3 sisters lost their sons. You know, that's huge. And I think, you know, the community came around, like, you know, saying the community came around was when both my cousins had their funeral. It was big. Like the town showed up. Yeah. And this was on Vancouver Island. But after that, even before my brother passed away, my family was actually together for a barbecue a week prior to the accident. They used to get together and they were talking about how lucky we were because we hadn't suffered anything, like nothing big. And then a week and a half later, this happens. And I would say ever since then, it hasn't been the same. Like, I don't want to like air out any dirty laundry, but let's just say that some people had a hard time dealing with how that accident happened, who was driving versus who wasn't driving. And, you know, I guess just I don't know if it was who suffered the biggest loss or who was the reason for the loss, but I think everybody just kind of went in their separate directions. And
I think sometimes too, what can happen is that when people are super, super hurting, I think naturally sometimes people want someone to blame, you know, and that's really hard because these are your loved ones and they're all hurting too. And it can make things really messy. When you guys went through, there was a bit here. You said there was like something. Was it that one of your the kids were like wondering, your cousins, who was going to drive and who wasn't, and one was in the back seat?
Yes.
Did something happen?
Yeah.
There?
So they all got, my brother and my cousins and their friends, they had 2 cars, and one of their friends, you know, everyone wanted to be in the car with Dustin. He had this brand new beautiful white Mustang GT. I mean, everyone wanted to be in it. So they did a coin flip. And
Right.
so they did the coin flip, and the other car was behind the car. So they saw the accident happen. So it must be, I can tell you that the people who were in the car who saw the accident have been suffering survivor's guilt like their whole life. And my brother suffered survivor's guilt his whole life as well.
Yeah, because he lost both of his cousins and he was the one who lived.
Yeah, everyone kind of questions, like, you know, why me?
Yeah.
Why am I the one who's alive, right? So,
and then he ended up, as he was healing, he kind of he ended up really angry, right? Like,
yep.
And I know that that's something that happens. So then let's go to, what did things look like after? How did Danny, how did he cope after when he was healing? Was there a time that he was coming to you? What was your relationship like after that?
Well,
during his healing and as he got better?
Okay, so prior to my brother healing, like, he lost his ability to walk. So I had a cleaning company at the time, and I ended up just working myself for 7.5 months straight. Like, I didn't take any days off. And after that, I quit everything and I went to BC for, like, I think 2 or 3 months.
To be with him.
Yeah, so I could help him learn to walk again. Like, he had a occupational therapist along with, like, a physiotherapist and all that. But I would go for walks with him, and he would be mowing the lawn and stuff, which was, like, you know, for us, that's an everyday thing. For him, that was like undiscovered territory again. It was like, or rediscovered territory. And I remember, like, one day we went for a walk, and my brother is actually the youngest grader in BC to have ever passed that. So he knows all about lumber, all about trees and lumbers and wood grades and stuff. And my family has a lot of, like, lumber experience, you know, like, my uncle owned a wood mill up until very recently. And I remember, like, we were just, like, walking in this path, and all of a sudden my brother just does the weirdest thing. He just goes 2 times faster than he should be able to. And he goes, "What's that here?" And it's a holly tree. And he runs out to the forest, and he's like, "What's this holly tree doing here?" And holly trees aren't really all over the place. They're a very seasonal, Christmassy thing.
And he just got excited.
He was super excited because one of his dreams was to have a holly tree farm where he just like grew all these holly trees, and he sold, like, all the parts of the holly trees to people during Christmas and stuff. So when he saw this, it was just really...
And all of a sudden, he's just kind of booking it a little bit.
Yeah, there was hope. Aww. There was hope, and he just booked it out into the woods, which I thought was really...
That's really special.
Yeah, it made 7.5 months of working straight with no days off absolutely worth it.
Yeah.
Just that moment.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet. And then he continued his healing, but you knew mentally he wasn't okay.
Yes.
What were the signs? What happened that showed you, like, he's not okay? And
well,
how did that affect you?
There was a settlement in the accident. There's a settlement, and my brother came into some money, and the lawyer and my parents had a talk about they needed to protect Danny from this because he did need access to it to take care of himself. But if he had full access of his money, he would absolutely drain his account, and within, like, a week he would be poor, or he'd probably end up doing drugs or drink himself into the grave or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So they're trying to protect him by not giving him all of that money.
Yeah, so they made it so you had, like, 2 people out of the 3 had to sign in order to release money. And that in itself would pit my parents against each other for a decade, because he would always go after one parent, and then if they said no, he'd go to the other parent, and he would just manipulate them back and forth. But yeah, he knew that he had this money. So my brother's biggest thing was he just became obsessed with what he would do with the money. the helicopter he would buy, the mansion he'd buy with a pad, like that rooftop helicopter pad. I mean, like, keep in mind, he was always a dreamer, but it seemed like the accident kind of really kicked him into high gear. But he just wanted to get away from who he was. He was lonely. He was aware of how slow he was thinking, and he was aware of how he used to be. He wasn't brain damaged enough to forget who he was, but he was brain damaged enough not to be who he was. And I think that was always the demon that chased him, was just the fact that he knew at the core he may never find love again.
Yeah.
He may never have any of that stuff again.
Yeah,
and
of course.
And he was very open with me. Like, he would, throughout the years, he would call me every single morning, and he would, most of the time he was miserable. He would just call me and be upset and be like, had a bad sleep and, haven't slept, or, like, I hate that I feel this way, or whatever. The point is, he would just, every day there was something. Some days he was filled with optimism and it was just awesome. But other days it wasn't the greatest, And after a decade of fielding those calls, I even started to step away from taking those calls to protect my own peace.
Yeah.
Which in itself is super hard, because
it's your family. And
when you see the number pop up and it's like, Danny, and you're like, oh man, like, this is going to ruin my morning.
And that they're in a hard place, but then that you're going to empathize, and then you're going to be in a hard place. And
Yeah, well, he got into drugs, and as things progressed, the morning calls would get more erratic. They would get more hard to understand. And I've been around drugs in my life. Throughout my whole life, there has been drug use through people around me. It's been bad. It's just, that hasn't been good.
And that's what you turn to.
And I have become a bit cold towards it. To be honest, it's something I want to work on, but my knee-jerk reaction to people with drug addictions now is anger.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel...
Because firsthand what that does to people and their families.
Yeah, like, yeah. I want to feel love. I want to feel love, and I do feel love. It's not hate. It's just a reaction that says, why would you put yourself and put others through this? Like, this thing that you're doing is literally ripping apart everybody, and you know it.
Yeah. And so he had some times, from what I understand, where he wanted to end his life. Can you tell me, maybe not tell us, maybe not all the graphic ways, but what happened? He was so unhappy. And then there was some times that he showed signs of, like, he just didn't want to be here anymore.
Well, I think that, well, I'll tell you, like, the actual stuff here. I mean, there's no point in hiding it. So my brother tried to end his life twice prior to succeeding. And the first time was, he was in a car in the garage, and he left that running, and the car ran out of gas. So that saved him. Probably one of the benefits of being poor, or not having access to your money. The second time was a lot more violent. So my brother got into, in with the wrong crowd. He had managed to convince one of my parents, not the other one, that he should get a house. And he went and got a house, and that house soon turned into a drug den. And the people who came into that house, one thing also about, people who are addicted to drugs is they tend to just, like, encroach on your space. If they find an empty place, they will all flock to it. And, he had a girlfriend at the time who happened to take his car and drive it up the road, and it wasn't uninsured, and it was a Nissan ZX or something super nice anyway. She hit a deer and rode off a $35,000 car. Well, that same person caught him in the bathtub. My brother had slit both of his wrists and both of his ankles very deep, because he said this feeling inside of him he had to get out, and this is how he had to get that feeling out. He felt like it was trapped inside. So that also, once again, had to help my brother learn to walk and use his hands again. So, we were back to square one, except this time it was a lot more costly as well. So
did he say that did he feel disappointment that when he tried to end his own life, it wasn't working?
Well, he joked that he'd failed at that too.
Like, I can't even end my own life.
Yeah, like I can't even get that right. So, but at that point, he was also kind of in the mode of doing. It was meth. I'm sure it was meth he was into, and that kind of fractured who he was. So beyond that, our conversations started to get less and less, and the distance between us as brothers really started to grow after that. So, especially once he healed up. When he was healed up, I wanted to be there because I can't even imagine what it's like to try to learn to walk and learn to use your hands again.
Yeah.
So I was there for that. But when I heard he got back into drugs and that he was doing it again, I really started to anticipate where this was going to go.
Did you feel hopeless? Helpless?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'd say even hopeless.
You just knew?
You always have hope, right? But you can't keep hoping on something that's fundamentally trying to unravel in front of you. Like, you can't say this story is going to end a different way than the person who's writing the story is trying to make it happen. And he's been trying to make this happen for a decade. This isn't like Danny's feeling bad today. He's going to be good for the next while. No, it's literally just my brother continually trying to push the envelope, telling me he doesn't want to be here anymore, telling everyone he doesn't want to be here, attempting to end his life 2 times, doing drugs. It just, we know where the story was going.
Right. And so what did you do? You knew where the story was going. You wrote something for him. What did you write?
Well, I ended up writing my brother a eulogy ahead of time, because I called him and I said, listen, I need to read you this, because if I don't read you this, you're never going to hear it. But this is what I'm going to read at your funeral. So I read it, and we had a good cry. And for a while, that actually shook him out of it. For a while, that was what he needed. He actually was good for a bit. But the problem with a mind as troubled as his, it always finds a way back to the dark path. So yeah, so that was that was tough. I mean, when you're reading your brother a eulogy, you realize, first of all, the power in writing.
You've always been a writer.
Yeah, and writing is absolutely what I want everybody to do, because I can't stress it enough that writing is probably the best way to find out what you're even thinking.
And I'm definitely going to ask you some questions about that, because I know that that's something you're really passionate about.
Yeah.
So after, you wrote this beautiful eulogy, if you can even say it like that. But what happened? One day, he had enough. What did that look like?
Well, my mom had called me again, and she said, last night I was at work, just starting my shift. My mom called me and said, last night your brother walked, down the middle of a road and got himself hit by a truck, and his spine severed and all that. And anyway, he didn't make it. And the thing about my brother is he always wears bright clothes, like the brightest, obnoxiously yellow shirts and big red everything. But this particular night, my brother put on a black hoodie, black pants, and blacked himself right out and put headphones in and walked straight down the middle of a road and knew he wouldn't be seen and got hit by a truck. And
what did that feel like at that time? Did you feel, we've talked about something that's like anticipatory grief or something.
yes, that's exactly what it is. I felt two opposing forces hit me. I felt a deep sense of sadness and relief. And I know that sounds bad, but I'm living with a decade of my brother's pain. And there's a point when you just have to realize that that pain needs to end. Mm-hmm. And knowing that that pain had ended for my brother, I just felt different. But you can keep in mind, I lost my brother a decade before this. He was like this version of who my brother was to this version of who my brother is. And so I'd already lost my brother. And then throughout the decade, I was losing my brother.
Yeah.
So when I lost my brother, I'd already written his eulogy. We'd already gone through this. I had already been to his funeral in my mind. So
you had sort of went through almost some of the stages of grief.
Yes. And not to sound like tough and all that. I think I went into shock. I worked the rest of my shift. Even my bosses were like, do you need to go? And I'm like, no. They're like, you should go. I'm like, no. If I go right now, I don't know what's outside of these doors. So
I noticed a pattern with you.
Avoidant.
Avoiding those really hard things, which I think can be really normal. That's a lot of emotions. And then you went home after work. Did you have a time that just, you finally let yourself kind of accept or break, did you break down after you went home?
No, I didn't cry for, I think, either a few days or a week. I just didn't allow myself to. Yeah, I remember it was when we went to his house where he lived, and I was going through his possessions, and in those possessions were just like things of our past and stuff, things I'd given him as gifts. And I think I went to the woodworking room that he had where he used to make these beautiful bowls and just awesome stuff. And I think at that moment, I realized like the weight of the loss. So I went outside of the field, outside of his place, and that was it.
That was your moment.
Yeah, that was the moment where it just hit me like a wave.
Yeah. And how did you have friends and family that, anyone in particular or a community that came, together for you while you were going through that? Did you have any really close, people, or did you kind of try to isolate yourself and deal with that by yourself?
I got my friends, still my friends that I have today. And they showed up, and, I'm a gamer. So I've played games my whole life. So the first person to make me laugh was my friend Paul, who had asked me, if my brother dropped any epic loot, which
it's a gaming term.
It's a gaming term. And, if you kill something in a game, it generally drops some sort of gold. So the idea was...
And Paul's quite the comedian, so
yes.
That's how he would try to help you heal.
But it did. It was actually that moment of goofiness that just cut through everything. And I was like, oh, okay, that's...
And sometimes that's what friends are for.
Yeah. And my buddy Chris, he was around. So, we all just...
Yeah.
We all just talked and all my friends came around, but like as with all loss, people can't grieve with you for the long term. They have their own life they have to get on to. And
you have to go through all of those stages by yourself. You can be in a crowded room and still feel alone, as one would say, because
Often.
you still have to go through all of those feelings by yourself. And so as you're working through all of those feelings, what helped you with healing?
Well, I mean, writing helped me with healing. I wrote, I journaled through it. I just started to like have conversations, even with my brother. I was doing photography at the time, so I was diving into a lot of that. Just generally, I think,
Your art.
yeah, it's like it was art. It was just the creative process in any form, but writing was the most helpful. I don't think there's ever been a force artistically in my life that's quite as helpful. I mean, I love music. Don't get me wrong. I think music is a part of everything I do. I write to music, and so those are almost inseparable to me. But yeah, I would say writing did it because you can keep having conversations with people about what you're feeling, but they cannot fully understand what you're going through. Like there was things with my brother's passing that they hit you every once in a while. Like I remember like when my brother first moved to his new place on Vancouver Island, and it was right after the accident, and well, not right after, but close after. And he'd finally got this place, and it was a beautiful little apartment, and he felt like he was getting on his feet, and he was so positive and everything. My parents went and bought him this amazing painting for his house, and he put it up on the wall, and he was so proud of everything because he was getting his independence back.
Yeah.
So he's getting his independence back and all that, and then one day I go into and this is prior to my brother passing away, and this was many years later. We go into a pawn shop. My brother loved pawn shops. And right there in the pawn shop was the painting that my parents got him.
Yeah.
And I was like, Nanny, what's this doing here? And he got really shy and really coy and really upset about it. He said he needed money. And he used that money for drugs. And I saw the gift. I just wanted to take it out of the store and say that you have no right to have this in your store. But
that's not their fault.
But that's the deal they made, right?
Yeah.
And those are the things that can hit you every once in a while, My brother had a best friend. His name was Curtis Higgins, known as Curtis the Hammer Higgins. He's a professional fighter. He was an awesome guy, man. He was just such a good friend for my brother. But I had seen him not too long ago. And even when I see my brother's friends, like once again, it's a gut punch. You want to see them, but everything's a bit of a gut punch.
There's always something that just, those memories that keep coming.
Yeah, I see things with my brother that like when I think of my brother, I fondly remember like laying on our bellies in front of the window while it was raining outside in the condo we were living in, and we both had these like video game magazines, and we were just like looking at them, and we were only like, I don't even know, 7 and 10, something like that. And that's the innocence I go back to.
Yeah, you want to remember all of those really lovely things.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the one thing about healing is that like you don't get to just be the two boys innocently hanging out. You have to kind of be a part of all the other stuff that comes along with that too. And my brother was not an easy person.
Yeah.
He was tough.
Yeah. And so as we're winding down toward the end, I think it's really important. You had to go through this healing process, as everyone does, and everyone has to take their time. You did writing.
Yep.
I know that you love journaling. Is there something, how could you give hope to, other people going through a really hard time, going through a lot of loss or hurt? Is there something that you recommend?
Well, I mean, first of all, I have my faith. And I was asked after my brother was in the hospital, I was asked, why I was so strong. What made me so strong? How could I be so strong? And I said, well, I'm not strong. I just know when to lean on my faith. So that was that part of it. To anybody who's going through a hard time, like, you're not the only person going through the hard time. So there's a real sense of being isolated and alone. When people go through hard times, they tend to just distance themselves.
Yeah.
And they tend to just like disconnect. Like you don't enjoy family meetings as much. Your friends are like, what happened to him? He's like silent. And that's just because you start to feel like nobody gets you. And then when nobody gets you, you just say, well, I'm better off on my own. I'll figure this out on my own.
Yeah.
So for anybody who's going through a hard time, you have to understand that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And you really have to look at the people around you. Not only do you lean on your faith, which should allow you to realize that you're not alone. I feel like I had friends. I started to lean on those friends. I had family still. Started to lean on the family. Started to realize that regressing and isolation wasn't the way to do it. But I also knew I had to have a conversation with myself. If I wasn't going to go to a therapist, I had to figure out what would be my therapy, and that's always been writing. So writing is my therapy. I'm not saying I wouldn't, benefit from a therapist, but I would say that writing has been a really great
that
thing.
Helped you through. And I know you always talk about journaling.
Mm-hmm.
Journaling is one of your things. So writing down maybe writing down your feelings and just making sure that you're not just isolating yourself.
Well, I think a lot of people, the reason they don't journal is because they think they've got to be writers to begin with, and you don't. Journaling is just you writing your thoughts. If you can talk, if you can think, you can journal, right? The other thing that bothers people and what stops them is they think people are going to read it. You don't have to keep your entries. No one ever said you had to keep your book. You don't have to keep a journal.
You need to write it and then you need to burn it. Whatever you have to do.
Yes, a lot of times.
Get the feelings out.
Yeah, like I think a lot of people have had things to say on social media, have gone on, written a giant post only to hit delete.
Yeah.
And go, okay, well, at least I said it.
Yeah.
I didn't have to post it. I just needed to get it out. Well, journaling's the same way. Like, you will find if you journal, you can open doors for what's stopping you, what's important, what's hurting you. If you just say, where is my faith at right now? What do I believe? You have to answer that. The page won't allow you to lie. You cannot lie to the page.
Yeah.
Because
being honest with yourself about your feelings is big. And and you know what I always say, it's, if you don't heal your wounds, you bleed all over the people who didn't cut you. And, at different times in our lives, we all have wounds or things that we have to work through. And if we don't take responsibility for trying to work through some of that hurt and pain, we can hurt other people. That really does happen, And I've talked to a number of people with a lot of hurt, and they said, I took it out on my kids, and I took it out on my wife, and I took it out. And
hurt people hurt people.
Hurt people. Yeah. So you wrote a book, and I want you quickly to just maybe we can end with you reading the poem.
Sure. So,
and thank you so much for being brave and talking about your story. We'd like to end it with one of your poems. And this poem, was this one about your brother?
Yeah, I mean, it's called My Brother. And I even drew a picture of the tattoo that my brother had on his neck, which was an infinity symbol because he believes in the afterlife. And, he was going to church and he was always searching. I'm not sure what he found. We didn't talk about that all that much, but he definitely liked to. In the later years, he called himself a wizard because somebody gave him a giant piece of wood staff and he would walk around with it. And he thought that was pretty cool. So who knows?
Yeah.
But anyway, this is called My Brother. I still talk to you, my brother. It's been a long time, hasn't it? I'm older than you now. Isn't that a strange thing? I'll be older than our father soon. And somehow, I think that would make you laugh. I've not heard from you since you passed on, even though others spoke of how you had tried. I promised that I searched for you in the skies, my dreams, and my prayers. I kept an open heart and an open mind, but you really are gone, aren't you? It's okay. I get it. You are my older brother, and you always tried to prepare me for what was to come. No need to be surprised that you are letting me find my own way through my life. It isn't forever though, right? We are going to see each other again one day, right? I hope so. That's tough.
That's tough. Thank you.